Out of these choices, which are the most harmful to you? Alcohol, drugs, tobacco, driving, or sugar? If you picked anything other than sugar, please listen closely. So I took a self-assessment and paid attention to my eating habits to find out how I was being harmed by sugar, and at that point, I chose to do something different. Sugar can be harmful when consumed at high levels. First, I will start with a background and share how much sugar on an average we consume daily and yearly in America. After you consider the first point, we will look at the dangers of our sugar consumption. Finally, I will explain sources of sugar that we consume that we might not be aware of. If I still have your attention, let me give you some background info on how much sugar we consume in America. Sugar in its original form comes from sugarcane. Sugarcane originates from India and was widely considered to have been discovered and made popular by the Gupta dynasty. Sugar was originally consumed by chewing sugarcane to extract the sweetness on the inside. It was discovered by the impure Gupta dynasty that it was more convenient to crystallize sugarcane and easier to transport in this form due to its growing popularity of sugar. Fast forward to the colonization of North America, which created a need for sugar-producing plants closer to those in Europe, causing Central America to be the largest producer of sugar due to the climate year-round. Sugar's popularity in cooking and overall consumption came to a place where producers could not produce at the rate the world was consuming sugar, and from this came the artificial sugars we consume on a regular basis. In 1900, on average in the U.S., 5 pounds of sugar was consumed per person a year. In 2000, the number rose to 150 pounds per person in a year. Today, an average adult American consumes 22 teaspoons of sugar a day, while the average American child consumes 32 teaspoons of sugar a day. Of 2,600 plus food additives, salt is number one and sugar is number two, where most sources of sugar are artificial. Natural sugar comes from sugarcane and was discovered in India, where it was later discovered that it was more efficient to crystallize sugar. Sugar's popularity grew where it at times was equal to the worth of gold. Because of sugar's popularity, the ability to produce it as fast as the demand was made eventually caused producers of sugar to come up with an alternative. This alternative we know is an artificial source that can be found in more places than you might think. In America, we are consuming sugar at an alarming rate. At the rate we are consuming mostly an artificial source of sugar, we will now consider the dangers of sugar consumption. This sweet substance has bitter consequences. Consuming sugar causes all of the following health risks and is linked to numerous problems that we may experience. Sugar is addictive and tricks the body into an opiate-like response where the brain activates the reward system, assisting us in desiring sugar. When the body constantly goes in and out of this false opiate state, the effects on our metabolism suffers the worst. We are designed to digest simple sugars in the forms of glucose. Instead, we're consuming more forms of complex sugars such as fructose, dextrose, aka corn syrup, and sucrose, just to name a few. Obesity is one of the biggest dangers of consuming excess amounts of sugar, but when we are consuming artificial forms, it makes the conditions even worse. Liver disease is linked to bad forms of sugar. Diabetes is another common danger when we consume too much sugar. Sugar should be consumed in lower amounts. We could be food that we are not consuming anything bad because of how it tastes. But after looking at dangerous conditions caused by consuming these forms of sugar, let us think again. If the dangers of consuming large amounts of sugar haven't scared you yet because you believe you can simply just take sugar out of your diet, I beg to differ because I doubt you really realize all the sources sugar is in. Let's discover exactly where we can find sugar. It is time for us to take a closer look at what we eat. And if we can find sugar in places, we would be surprised to find sugar. It is expected to find sugar in candy, cakes, fruit, and even foods we ourselves add sugar to. But what about places we don't expect sugar to be added? From now on, take a look at labels and see how many, not so many, sweet products have added sugar. Sugar is added to foods not just to make them sweeter by the food industry. It is added because of its known addictive traits. Added sugar can be surprisingly found in ketchup, salad dressing, items labeled diet, and even sugar-free. The food industry can get away with a big label of sugar-free if they use a source of high fructose corn syrup, which is a fancy term for sugar that is made from corn in a laboratory. Sugar is also added to frozen entrees, soy milk, and even crackers. The question I raise now is not where sugar can be found in our foods, but what foods do not have added sugar. Unfortunately, that list is shrinking because we have convinced food makers that we love eating sugar no matter what the food is. Do you consider your current eating habits healthy? Do you think you are consuming too much sugar? Will you start checking labels of the food you eat? Will you go and verify for yourself the dangers of sugar consumption? If you answered yes to at least one of the questions, my time in front of you was not in vain. I didn't believe something so sweet could be harmful for me to consume. After some research, I concluded that sugar is very harmful. We discussed the background history of where sugar originally came from and how it changed over time. We also went over dangers of the many different sources of sugar. Lastly, we highlighted uncommon foods that have added sugar. I hope that the time I have spent discussing sugar today will help you be more informed about what we should and not consume if we want to be as healthy as possible. I love sugar just as many of you do. I will just choose to be more mindful of how much I consume and what kind I put in my body. I want to thank you for listening.